Warning, warning, warning. All SDAs, all Seventh-day Adventists, all Sabbath-keeping individuals, Sabbath worshipers, this is a warning. Beware of this movement, Project 2025, within the next 4 years. When I say 4 years, I'm actually addressing the next presidential cycle, which of course begins on that date of the inauguration in the month of January 2025. Some solemn things are going to be presented today, and I want you all to pay attention. Don't look to the left, nor to the right. Look straight on. Now today, I have a special guest, Marie Diaz from Eyes on the Times. She has come to help to break down and analyze what is happening in America since November 5th and the election. Trump has won. He is now the president-elect. Welcome, Marie Diaz.
Thank you so much, Pastor, for having me.
We want to get right into this. I know that we have also this theme entitled Tyranny in the Time of this Golden Age. This new world order, the new order of the ages. We're going to be addressing that. Yes, friends. Warning to all seven-day Sabbath keeper. Beware of Project 2025 and the tyrannical movement in the so-called Golden Age, new order of the ages. Marie, take it away. What are your eyes on?
Right, Pastor. Well, we're going to jump right into this. And so let's take a look at the speech following the announcement that Trump won the election. And we'll jump right in from there.
Here it is.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission. Well, these are...
Right. So as we can see from that clip there, we see that he mentioned the fact that this is going to be the golden age. He also talked about the fact that he believes that God spared his life so that he can restore America to its greatness. Now, we want in this presentation, at least in the first segment, to determine what does he mean when he's talking about this golden age. The first thing that I think we need to pay attention to is the fact that there's going to potentially be a clean sweep with President Trump entering into the office in 2025. And so we're going to take a look at this article from Sky News where it says, clean sweep on the cards as Republicans eye House majority after regaining control of the Senate, helping Donald Trump take the White House. Now, for those of you that may not necessarily understand what that means, in layman's terms, that just means that he will control the majority of both the House of Representatives as well as the Senate. And so you can also take a look at this image here from NBC News so that you can have an idea of what's going to take place. Now, he hasn't been able to flip the House as of yet, but currently he's flipped 6 seats. So he's well on his way. And also this is significant, in understanding this because as we're moving through this presentation, you'll understand why he needs to be able to control both the House as well as the Senate in order for them to forward their particular agenda. I do want to note, because, we're going to be looking at both his previous term as well as what's going to be his next term. And we want to be able to see the difference between the two terms, because some may feel as if, he's going to office again. There's no reason for us to be alarmed, but we're going to be able to show clearly that there is cause for us to be alarmed. So, we're going to take a look at another clip. And in this clip, they're going to detail the significance of the president being able to control both the House and the Senate. Let's take a look at that.
And just how important is it for a president that his party controls Congress? Well, obviously, it's important to have your party control Congress because that makes just life much more easier for you. It's easier to get legislation through because whoever controls the House and the Senate can put those bills up on the floor, get them to vote, get them more easily passed without having to compromise as much with the other side. But the Senate control is also very important for other things because the Senate confirms a lot of the political appointees, the political nominees. I'm talking about, for example, cabinet secretaries, ambassadors, as well as judges. We've seen that Joe Biden has used the fact that the Democrats were controlling the Senate to push through a record number of federal judges, more than 200 by now. So that is very important. If the Republicans take control of the Senate, they can block or heavily restrict the number of those political nominees that get confirmed by the Senate. And of course, when you're talking about judges, it's not just the federal ones. If there is a vacancy on the Supreme Court, whoever controls the Senate will have a big say in whether or not that seat gets filled and by which president.
All right. Thank you very much for...
Very interesting. So I just want to reiterate some of the points that she made. She talked about the fact that when he is able to control both sides of Congress, it's easier for him to pass legislation, especially controversial legislation. The House and the Senate, they present bills, right? And they can get them passed without compromise or any type of pushback. And so the Senate also confirms the appointees, the ambassadors, the nominees, and also judges, not just on the Supreme Court, but also on the lower appellate courts as well. And this is significant as we're moving forward. So now I want to make mention of the fact that Trump laid the foundation during his first term. You know, we know that he was able to secure several justices on the Supreme Court as well as on the lower court. And this following news article, the reporter mentioned actually in the clip that the appointees on the Supreme Court, of course, you have to think about this when we're looking at like religious laws. And of course, we'll address this a little bit later in our presentation. But when you consider, we know that laws generally start most people, when they're litigating these laws, right, they go to the lower courts and it eventually goes to the Supreme Court. So him packing the court is to his advantage. Now, we're going to look at this next article from Business Insider, and it kind of reiterates what I just mentioned. It says Trump has crossed a major mark as he tries to quietly cement a lasting legacy. It says President Trump recently made his 100th nomination, blowing past the rate of nominations at which recent presidents have advanced. Trump has now submitted 105 individuals to vacancies on the appeals court, district courts, and attorney position. So he is inundating the court system with his nominations, right? And this is key, like I just mentioned, with him wanting to pass religious laws in the future. Now, you know, we can also look, for instance, at what happened with Roe versus Wade. This is just an example of what can happen or potentially happen in the future when it comes to other laws. And that overture took place again under Trump's watch. Now, the reverse is also true. So if he is packing the courts, right, eventually when we start seeing Sunday laws, and remember when the same-sex union law was passed, it happened state by state, and then it eventually reached the Supreme Court. So when you flood the courts with conservative justices, right, they're going to be able to pass these laws, these religious laws, right? And then eventually they'll be able to pass a Sunday law on the federal level, just as they did with the same-sex union law. And so now we're going to look at another clip here, and he's going to tell us again, with more detail, what it means when Trump controls the three branches of government. Take particular attention to some of the things that he has to say here.
Here it is.
I mean, let's talk about the significance of a Republican Senate if, and I repeat, if Donald Trump is elected president. It means that they can confirm without any Democratic votes any appointment he makes to his cabinet, to the government, to the Supreme Court, should there be a vacancy. It's an enormous advantage to a president. And at this point, we haven't talked about it much, but in the House, although that hasn't been decided yet, the Republicans have flipped 3 Democratic seats. The Democrats haven't flipped a single Republican seat. So there is the possibility here of a complete united Republican government with Donald Trump as the president and with a Republican House and Senate, which means that in terms of appointments, in terms of immigration policy, economic policy, environmental policy, you name it, he could have a pretty blank check.
That's startling. He said he would essentially have a blank check. So he could essentially do whatever he wants to do, if he is able to win, again, all 3 branches of government. And I'm speaking specifically about the executive branch, which he has already won, the Senate, and also the House. Now, that being said, Trump's first term, he nominated or was able to nominate and secure 3 conservative justices. Of course, we know that's Neil Gorsuch, that's Brett Kavanaugh, and also Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. And he was able to change the majority of the court to a Catholic conservative majority. Now, let's take a look at this next headline here from CNN. It says, Trump transformed the federal judiciary. He could push the courts further right in his second term. And for those of you that don't know it, right now, the majority, even though it is conservative, it's 6-3. Okay, let's look at this next article, right, from the New Republic. It says, liberals just lost the Supreme Court for decades to come. And it says every presidential election is about control of the Supreme Court. By re-electing former President Trump, voters guaranteed that all but the youngest of them will live under a deeply conservative high court for the rest of their lives. This is so significant. We're going to look at this second article from Reuters. It says Trump could bolster U.S. Supreme Court conservative majority. It says President Trump, Donald Trump, who moved the U.S. Supreme Court drastically rightward in his first term, may get a chance to rejuvenate its 6-3 conservative majority by replacing some or all of its 3 most senior conservatives with younger jurists, and perhaps even expand it if a liberal justice leaves. Now, we're going to skip down. It says, and Trump would be able to expand the court's conservative majority from a 6-3 right to a 7-2. That is so startling. If one of the 3 liberal justices steps down during his presidency, the oldest of the 3, which is Sotomayor, and of course she is 70 years old and she has diabetes. Now, I just want to put this plug here. Of course, if he's replacing the 3 conservative Catholic justices, you may say, well, that doesn't matter. There's a couple of points that I want to mention. It says, Justice John Roberts, he is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and he's one of the justices that may resign during his presidency, right? It says Trump would be able to essentially replace him, and he could replace him with a staunch conservative. The reason why I mentioned staunch conservative is because John Roberts is actually he's the swing vote is what Correct. I want to mention. So sometimes he can, vote with either side. Yes. But if Trump is able to replace him, right, he's able to put somebody in office that is a staunch conservative that will vote the way that he wants him to vote. The other issue also, again, as an article mentioned, is that one of the liberals could resign, which means then they would have the majority. 7-2. So no matter what legislation goes forward, if they want to pass this legislation, they can force it through. The other point that I also want to mention is the fact that John Roberts is the Chief Justice. And the reason why this is important to mention is because he is the one who determines what court cases come before the Supreme Court. And that's significant because if you look historically at how the Supreme Court has decided which Sabbath cases to litigate, they have often, always, I want to say, had a bias towards Sunday legislation as opposed to Sabbath legislation. Pastor, I believe that you had interviewed one of the gentlemen who attempted to have his case seen before the Supreme Court.
Darrell Patterson.
Yes, sir.
The Walgreens case.
Yes, and they refused to see his court case. But then I believe it was Marie Pierre. She went before them and she won millions of dollars.
Right.
So you already see that there's a slant, not towards Sabbath keeping, but towards Sunday keeping. Now we're going to look at two more clips, and we're going to see.
And before we get there, we want to also understand that based on the Bible, that in order to crucify Jesus, the Jewish leaders had to have someone in the government, someone as a judge that they could manipulate and control. And as it was in the first Advent Bible times, so it has to be in the last days. And that's why it's significant for this party to control the courts, just as the Bible and inspiration says. How does America speak? She speaks to her legislative and judicial authorities. That's Congress and all three levels of the court system in America: district, appellate, and Supreme Court. Continue.
So now we're going to take a look at a couple of clips. And in this first clip, we're going to see how Trump is essentially and is going to drastically change the U.S. government through it's legal what he's doing, but how it's going to drastically change the U.S. government. Let's take a listen.
Okay, here it is. So are we really saying then that we're seeing a repetition of Pilate? All right, listen.
Mr. Sabato, we're focusing on the presidential race, but it's not the only thing people in the United States have been voting for. We're hearing that the Senate has gone to the Republicans. That's all, and we're waiting for the House of Representatives.
Yes, we don't really have a good read on the House, though one would think, since Republicans have won everything else, they'll probably win the House of Representatives as well. So they have the U.S. House, they have the U.S. Senate, they have the presidency, and they have a large majority on the U.S. Supreme Court. It is one-party rule, top to bottom.
Where do you think Donald Trump might start if that's the case?
I wouldn't presume to guess that. There will be loads of people around him. He's bringing in a very different type of staff aide than he had in the first term. They're much more radical. They're more extreme. And I think people will see very, very quickly that the second term of Donald Trump really isn't a carbon copy of the first.
He said it, right?
Now Marie, just make this point as succinct and clear as possible, because again, people are saying, what's the big deal? Because he was in the seat 2016 to 2020. So what's the alarm now, since he's going in 2024 through 2028? Continue.
First of all, he mentioned that the second term isn't a carbon copy. And the reason why I'm going to mention what he said, one, he says that it is a one-party rule. The second point that I want to mention is that he is bringing in different types of staffing than he did previously. That's significant, right? It says that they are much more radical and more extreme. And we're going to see that a little bit further.
No, stop. Now,
yes,
here is what the critics are going to retort and say. That is someone who is not on the inside making that statement. Later on, we're going to respond to that critique, that we're going to have people from the inside of the Trump movement make the very same statement. It is not going to be as the first term. We're going to be more radical in the second term. Alarm, wake up. It's a warning. Continue.
I want to make mention of a quote from the Spirit of Prophecy from Great Controversy, page 234. Listen to what Sister White says. She says, under various guises, the Jesuits worked their way into offices of state, climbing up to be counselors of kings and shaping the policies of nation. Now, that's an interesting quote, right? I particularly believe that J.D. Vance, in a moment, we're going to be discussing him, and we're going to allow you to hear from the horse's mouth what he has to say based on what we just heard on the previous clip. But I really believe that J.D. Vance was called for such a time as this, and he is put in office to help Trump shape his policies, right? And the reason why I say this is when you look at his track record and when you look at his connections to the Roman Catholic Church, and particularly his affinity towards legislation legislating morality, I think you'll understand why I say what I said. But before
hold on, because some folks may not get that connection, J.D. Vance and Roman Catholicism. In the Bible, chapter 13 of Revelation, verse 11 onward, Protestant America forms an image to the first beast. The first beast in verse 1 through verse 10 is the papacy. So that means you have to have the papal influence in America's governmental structure to shape America to look like popery. Church controlling state, silence, prosecute, persecute all dissenters. Continue.
Right. Exactly, Pastor. And we're going to take a look at another clip from this clip we just saw, and we're going to see how they are removing the guardrails, and they did it legally. Let's take a listen.
Here it is.
Douglas Herbert, bringing you back in there, listening to Mr. Sabato there, it looks like it is more than leaning towards Tom, and it looks like he will have absolute power.
Yeah, that was a real upper, right? That little interview there. Look, we knew this election had sort of hanging over it like a Damocles sword the prospect of the guardrails being removed from sort of the American institutions and the famous system of checks and balances. Americans, through their history, and let's not forget, next year is going to be the 250th celebration, right, of a couple of years of American independence, and it's been really taken for granted. You could say that America, for much of that time, has been on cruise control when it comes to this assumption that institutions are protected, that the holder of the highest office in the land obviously will respect those institutional safeguards and sees it, even more than that, sees it as their duty to respect those safeguards. But we have here, it's not a matter of editorializing and saying, well, perhaps, maybe, if. We have explicitly the potentiality of a candidate Trump, winning the presidency for a second non-consecutive term, and basically doing his will. As he said, he jokingly said, but it wasn't really said in a joking tone at one point in the campaign, that he would be a dictator on day one. But here we are, sitting here, Paris time, at nearly 6:30 in the morning, shortly after midnight, U.S. time, East Coast time, and all of these cliches, all these things that have been being said for months, right now, that is a clear and present scenario that could become the actual reality in America and for the rest of the world in the next several hours.
Mm-hmm. Did you catch that? He said that they could remove the guardrails, and also that they're essentially legally removing the checks and the balances in the system. It's a one-party rule. And so you can see already that there is a decided difference between his previous term and the current term. Now, we're going to take a look at J.D. Vance, and I think this is probably the clip, Pastor, that you're alluding to, where those in his campaign, those who are going to play an active role in his current term, how they're speaking and how radical they are. I mean, this clip is astounding. Pastor, you can go ahead and play this clip.
Because again, those on the outside said it's going to be more radical. Now we can answer the critics. These are men on the inside who are saying the very same thing. Here it is, J.D. Vance.
I think that the thing that we have to take away from the last 10 years is that we really need to be really ruthless when it comes to the exercise of power.
Oh, ruthless. Now, can it get any clearer as you look at Revelation 13? A beast with lamb-like horns that will speak as a dragon. Which dragon is tame and docile and friendly? Dragon? The context and connotation is being ruthless, being draconian. Clip 2.
And if we're going to actually really affect real change in the country, it will require us completely replacing the existing ruling class with another ruling class. I say that.
Now, if you won't say anything, allow me to say it. In other words, they're using a religious test for public office. That is against Article 6 of our liberties, the U.S. Constitution. You cannot use a religious test to hold any office of public trust under the United States. This is a disregard of the U.S. Constitution, just as Revelation 13:11 said they would do. Here it is. Listen.
You know, you actually just, I think, go down American institutions and make it possible for conservatives to actually govern and succeed in these institutions in a way where they're currently cut out. That's basically my strategy, is like deinstitutionalize the left, reinstitutionalize the right. It is very hard. It will require men and women of incredible courage, but I don't see another way out. I mean, I really...
Ruthless. Yeah. Now, are you saying, okay, go ahead, Marie.
No, I just wanted to simply point out some of the things that he said. He talks about replacing the ruling class. Yes. And then he talks about essentially overthrowing the government. And what he's talking about is actually taking place. You know, it's happening so, stealth that most people aren't picking up on it. No. But the gentleman in the previous clip talked about the fact that it's a one ruling party that's going into office, right? They're changing Congress. They're changing the judicial branch, and they're putting in a conservative president. We're totally seeing our government change literally before our eyes. And I'm hoping that most of us are able to see that. Were you going to say something, Pastor?
Yes.
Before
So I want to stay on the same sentiments of J.D. Vance and allow another member in their party to make a similar statement showing that this second term is going to be more radical, more extreme than the first term. Now, you have to understand this before I roll this clip. If we individually have an agenda to accomplish a particular task, we had one time period to get it done, but it was our first time. And we did not learn the ins and outs, the ropes, and how to get things done effectively. And circumstances caused us to be relieved of our position. But providentially, we are brought back to the same place to get that previous agenda accomplished. Would we not be more experienced? Would we not now know what not to do and what to do? Would we not know what buttons to press? What doors to open? Would we not know who to call in to assist us to get it done? Exactly what they're doing. So now the experience that they had in the first term, they will build on it. So only somebody who is mentally infirmed would think that the first term, the second term, would be less radical than the first. It has to be more radical because now they're more experienced. One reason why the president doesn't have an affinity publicly with the previous church leaders, men and women, as he had in the first term, the Pentecostals jumping up and down, but now he has switched gears. He has brought in a new team. This team, these men are more of the conservative class, more of the Christian nationalist class, the dominionist class. They're more up here, more mental, not the charismatic jumping up and down like Paula White and what's that guy with the airplane?
Copeland.
Kenneth Copeland. Not that class. Does he still have a link? Yes. But it's the other class now he's dealing with because he knows what it takes. The first group were more, comical, humorous, joking, playing games. This one is not playing any games. It's a new team, new day. Here is Steve Bannon. Hear what he says. Same rhetoric as J.D. Vance.
The issue we had when we first won is we weren't staffed up. We didn't have enough MAGA-type people that have been trained.
There it is.
James, tell us what you're doing here. You two are...
He said it. He's telling you. Now watch this. And of course, that would make void the U.S. Constitution because he's making and using a religious test for people to have public office. Move on from that. That would also eliminate the First Amendment because now they would prohibit the free exercise of religion. They are establishing a religion. Which religion? They are establishing the Christian version called MAGA. That's what they're doing. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Wake up, my friend. It's a warning. Continue. Watch this here. This is fresh off the press, Marie. Before we came live, I forgot to share this with you. November 7th, MAGA stars, Make America Great Again stars, gloat. They can finally, quote unquote, admit Project 2025 will be Trump's agenda as Steve Bannon names first targets. Steve Bannon, the one you just heard speak a while ago. Now watch this. In the clip, Steve Bannon mentioned Matt Walsh. If you don't know who Matt Walsh is, you can search for him on X, on YouTube. He's linked with the Daily Wire and that Jewish preacher in my Ben Shapiro and others. Here is Matt Walsh's post on X. This was November 6th. He writes, now that the election is over, I think we can finally say that, yay, actually, Project 2025 is the agenda, period. LOL. Do you know that there is an idiom that says there is a grain of truth in every joke? Here is Steve Bannon referring to Matt Walsh.
Matt Walsh, welcome back. Matt Walsh, I think, is a very smart and a funny guy. Just put up on Twitter. Now that the election is over, I think we can finally say that, yeah, actually, Project 2025 is the agenda. That's from Matt Walsh. Fabulous. I'm gonna have to, Grace, if we can grab that and
Now, would Matt Walsh have made that statement before the votes, before the election? No, because it was too much of a controversial issue to even make that even as a joke if he's joking. Now, Matt Walsh, I don't believe he even knows the storm that's coming. Let me repeat that. I don't believe Matt Walsh even knows of the termites in the wood of the house. He knows nothing of this tyrannical movement behind Project 2025. Let me move on from here. Marie, you could pick it up now.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. We're going to fulfill that mission. Well, these are...
Marie.
You know, Pastor, there's so many thoughts that are going through my mind. You know, as you were speaking, I was just thinking to myself that, you know, God in his mercy, I believe, gave us a respite when he allowed Biden to go into office. And many of us probably didn't catch it. But hindsight, listening to what Bannon just said and the things that are currently happening are going to happen, we're going to realize that these final movements that Sister White told us were going to be rapid movements are going to, you know, happen in quick succession, and that it's so important for us to really acknowledge and see these movements for what they are and to prepare ourselves, you know, with regard to that. And so were you going to make mention of something else? Okay.
No.
You know, you just...
I mean, we just heard Trump speak about he's now elected and expect this golden age. How many people really understand what that means?
Few. I don't think anyone really understands that.
Go ahead, Marie.
Right. You know, and that's the interesting thing as we transition here. I just really want to point out that there are a lot of things that we miss that comes out in the media. There's terms that people use that, kind of go over our head. And so we're going to dig into that just a little bit. But I want to use the Bible kind of as an example to illustrate the point that I'm going to make with this next segment. The Bible uses very interesting language. One of the things that Sister White tells us is that the surface readers anchor nowhere. And when you're reading the Bible, you have to be very intent. You have to analyze the words that the Bible uses. There's a scripture in Daniel 8, verse 23. I'm just going to read it. It says, in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Now, that has nothing to do with, per se, with Trump, right? But I want to use that as an example because the Bible uses dark sentences. Now, for some of us, you may skip over that. You may not necessarily know what that means, right? But when you use the concordance and you look up the definition of dark sentences, it means like riddle, difficult question, parable, mysterious, perplexing question, right? And Jesus, in a sense, used the same thing as well. I'm not saying he used dark sentences, but he used parabolic language, right? And what you find in the occult is that they also use parabolic language, but they don't refer to it as that. They refer to it as esoteric and exoteric, right? And I'm going to give you an example of what that means so that you'll understand as we're moving forward how this applies. Now, when Jesus spoke to the disciples about the sower and the seed, for those who understood the exoteric meaning, which means just the very surface meaning, you would think that Jesus was talking about a farmer just simply sowing seeds, right? But later on, the disciples went to Jesus and they were inquiring of the esoteric meaning, the meaning that most wouldn't understand, right? And of course, Jesus told them what it meant. It meant that the seed, the word, the heart, that's what it was referring to. As I mentioned, in the occult world, they do the exact same thing. So when you hear this golden age, you hear these other things, they're referring to something else. And most of us, right, it goes over our heads. Now, you may think that I'm conjecturing, that I have no idea what I'm talking about. But for those who do know, they show signs that they understand what it means. Now, you just heard Trump say that we're going to be entering into this new golden age. Now, we're going to look at somebody else, Elon Musk specifically, right? And this is somebody who newly embraced Trump, right, and was working hand in hand with him to help him get elected. I want you to take a look at his most recent post and what he had to say regarding Trump entering into office. Let's take a look at this tweet here.
Here it is.
This is so startling, right? Do you see the headline there? It says Novo Ordo Seclorum. For most of us, we don't know what that means, right? And that goes over our head. Did you know it's also on the dollar as well? For those of you that don't know what that means, and of course, I want you to see that he has a picture of himself as well as Trump, right? So we're going to take a look at Wikipedia so that you can understand what that means. This Novus Ordo Seclorum, all that simply means is the new order of the ages. Lord have mercy, right? In other words, a new world order. Yes, sir.
No, so the golden age and the new order of the ages.
Yes, sir. Right. And so he's alluding to that. Right. But this is what got me as I was doing my research.
And both are moneyed men.
Yes.
Both are in finance. And that term is on the back of the US dollar bill. And there are actually pictures and videos of even Elon Musk meddling into the Gothic themes and witchcraft themes. I won't go there right now. I won't break the train of thought. Continue.
Right. And so, again, you may be thinking these are just mere coincidences, but as I just illustrated that, there's esoteric and exoteric meanings, right? And so when you hear these buzzwords in the community, it may signal one thing to us and may signal something else to the community. And what I want you to realize is that there are other individuals in the media that are using the same similar language, letting us know that this is the dawning, the beginning of this new era, and they're just saying it in different ways. We're going to look at two articles here. This first one comes from The Guardian, and I want you to listen to the language. Some of you may catch it, some of you may miss it. Listen to what it says. It says, election night on Fox News, host lauds Trump as Phoenix from the ashes. Now, again, Many people may not catch that. They have no idea what that means. That just may mean a bird that's flying out of ashes, right? This next article, just other articles saying the exact same thing. Fox News anchor hails Trump as biggest political phoenix from the ashes in U.S. political history. Now, I'm going to give you a textbook definition of what the phoenix is, okay? The phoenix is a mythological bird, and I didn't give you this slide, but it's a mythological bird that symbolizes renewal, rebirth, and resurrection. It is often depicted as being consumed by flames and rising from the ashes. And this is what it symbolizes, which symbolizes transformation and renewal through destruction. Okay, that's what that means, right? So it means a renewal, it means a transformation. So when you add all of these things together, what they're saying essentially is the era that we're heading into is a renewal, it's a rebirth, it's a transformation, a new world order, a new order of the ages, right? But Pastor, you have one more slide, and this is coming from the Britannica. I think this is what kind of sent me over the edge. What the phoenix is associated with. The phoenix is a bird, a fabulous bird associated with worship of the sun. Lord have mercy. Unbelievable, right? So you mean to tell me of all of the symbols, that they could have used to characterize Trump, next term, they chose something that symbolizes transformation and the worship of the sun. I mean, who is writing this? It's unbelievable, right? And I'm supposed to believe that this is somehow coincidental. It isn't. The Bible says the wise shall understand. And if you truly are piecing these things together, you'll be able to see the big picture. So with that being said, of course, the next thing that we have to think about as Trump is relaying, this idea of this new order of the ages, which is associated with sun worship, are we seeing that he's promulgating this idea of sun worship?
That's the key. Because not just what he said, words, but what about his actions? Because the actions speak louder than words. Let me add something here, Marie. The golden age. We who understand prophecy, we know about Daniel 2. Were you going there?
No, I wasn't.
Now, the actual head of the image in that second chapter of Daniel is gold. Gold. And that stone hits the image on his feet. And when it does, it destroys all the elements that comprise the image. Even the gold characteristic traits will be in the feet, the toes, when that stone ends Earth's history. That means the same theories, the same theology and philosophies, the same worship style and laws that were prominent in the head of gold, Babylon, will be in the earth just before that stone. Second coming of Christ, the end of this earth's history. What happened in Babylon, the head of gold, the golden age? What happened in Babylon? Number one, people were forced to take Babylon's elixir, Babylon's health protocol, or die. Daniel 1. People were forced to bow down to an image and worship falsely or be thrown in the fiery furnace. That's the golden age. And just before the stone hits, the second coming of Christ, the end of this earth's history, that same golden age will be seen in the last days. Are we in the last days, my friends? Warning, 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 warning. So let's come back. Not only his words and other people's words, let's see the actions. Are they pushing for Sunday worship? Marie, take it away.
Of course they are. In this next article, right, it says Trump vows to support Christians during his speech. He says, bring back our religion. And we have a clip where he's actually bemoaning the idea that church attendance is falling. And so let's take a listen to that.
Here it is.
Right back on that. But for 4 years, we went through a great period. You were able to speak. And we're going to make that on a permanent basis. You're going to be able to do it because you're the people we want to hear from, the pastors and the ministers and the rabbis. The people in this room are the people we want to hear from, and they have to have a political voice. If you think about it, You have men, you have women, and you have religion. If you look at it, you have more than the men, you have more than the women. You have such power, but you weren't allowed to use that power.
Marie, before I play the second clip, because I can just hear it now from the critics who are saying, but he said, Rabbi are Sabbath worshipers. Rabbi. Now, do you realize that what Trump is speaking about, he is referring to Project 2025 Heritage Foundation? Their spokespersons are telling us publicly that they're only promoting Sunday closings, Sunday rest, no Sabbath, Sunday. So I'm wondering if Trump even know what's really coming. Clip 2.
Now allowed to use it. I get in there, you're going to be using that power at a level that you've never used it before. It's going to bring back the church. I don't like the charts when I see charts where they're going in the wrong direction. We don't like that. We're going to bring it back, and I really believe it's the biggest thing missing from this country. It's the biggest thing missing. We have to bring back our religion. We have to bring back Christianity in this country.
And by the way, Judaism is not Christianity. Hold on now. So you could see that his words are conflicting each other. He said rabbi in the first clip, then Christian religion? The Jewish religion is not Christianity. Wake up, friends. Listen prayerfully. Continue, Marie.
You know, Pastor, also in the great controversy, we saw historically that when Sunday legislation was coming to the forefront, they upheld both Sabbaths, right? And then eventually the Sunday Sabbath, quote unquote Sabbath, you know, they were lifting that one up and they got rid of the true Sabbath. So, you know, it can point to that as well. But, you know, again, going back to this idea of what he's doing to be able to help bring religion to the forefront, you know, we're seeing also that he is going to reinstate. I'm mentioning that, you know, so that we realize that he did have that during the first term. But I also want to make a point also, as you're looking at this article where it says Trump vows to create faith office with access to the Oval Office, I want you also to remember that within the context of this presentation, there are many things that are now in place that weren't in place previously. Namely, J.D. Vance wasn't his running mate, his vice president. We also didn't know anything about Project 2025. You know, we didn't have, and of course, a part of that movement is to institute or legislate a communal rest, right? And of course, we didn't see where the Mike Pence, right? We also didn't see before where the conservative justices, right? There would be a majority 7-2. So it just goes to show that there are a lot of things that are going to be in place that weren't previously in place. And so
anybody who thinks that Mike Pence was more radical and extreme in religion than J.D. Vance is having his or her head in the proverbial sand. Continue, Marie.
Right, exactly. And of course, we know that Trump has tried to distance himself from Project 2025, but there are many, many links that link him right back. Maybe not him specifically, but those who are around him, right? And, you know, when we look at, for instance, this new article that's coming from CBS News, it says hundreds of proposals in Project 2025 match Trump's policies, right? There's the link between Trump and Project 2025 through J.D. Vance, because he just wrote the foreword to Project 2025's leader's book. You know, you can find that on Huffington Post. And of course, we have several video clips where you can see that J.D. Vance has acknowledged Kevin Roberts. I believe we have that clip if you'd like to play that, Pastor.
Yes, let's play it.
And I want to thank especially Kevin Roberts and all of the Heritage Foundation for 50 years of incredible work on conservative policy. You know, the old famous...
There it is. And here is Kevin Roberts acknowledging that J.D. Vance, he is his guy.
1 second, please.
Okay. We have confirmed news that Senator Vance is the vice presidential running mate. You will see a broad smile on my face because you may know that we're good friends I will offer two comments about that. The first is the entire list of names considered are great men and women, truly, truly, all of them friends of heritage. There, among them, though, was someone that privately we were really rooting for, and he's just been named the running mate. Why were we rooting for him? Not even because of politics and policy, but because of who.
Hold on.
Not even because of politics and policy, but because of who he is. J.D. Vance is a great husband. He is someone and a great dad. He's been a great member of the Senate. I believe it when I.
So which organization gave the list of options to President Trump? Heritage Foundation, Project 2025. So it didn't matter who he chose. It's one of their guy. What now? They're all friends, all good friends. Understand this, my friends. But of course, he said the real one was whom? J.D. Vance. And Trump's son came out publicly and said, I personally went to my father and said, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance. Continue.
Mercy, right? And of course, what is Project 2025 advocating? They're advocating Sunday legislation. You know, in their own words, we have a slide here where you can see it for yourself, where they're advocating, you know, talking about the mandate for moral and legal regulation, you know, surrounding the day of rest. It says Congress should encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act. So if you want to see it, you'll see it. If you don't, you won't. And so this is, you know, so important for us to present this with regards to Project 2025. And Pastor, I believe that you have something to say in regards to this.
Yes. I want us to realize that in order for the mark of the beast to be enforced, the image of the beast must first be formed. And the image of the beast is actually church controlling state, because that is how the papacy is set up. Church controlling state. Exactly that is going on right now in America. The transformation is taking place. We began, I'm summarizing because we're going somewhere now. We began by showing that America speaks to her authorities, judicial and legislative. Trump has a one-party rule right now. The Senate is already under his control. Here's what I'm going to say. Please don't miss it. Who is the Speaker of the House? It's Speaker Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson is also connected to the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025. You can't make this up. It's the Speaker of the House that brings the bills to the floor for the bills to be voted on. He said that out of his own mouth when he was selected as the new Speaker of the House. He can simply bring a Sunday bill, just as Senator Henry Blair brought that Sunday bill to the Senate in Congress in 1888. But this time, there's no retreat or surrender. This time, a Sunday law will be enforced. And once church and state are united, here it is.
When the founders talked about separation of church and state, they had a historical context that we really lack.
Reverend Eddie Hyatt, author of Pilgrims and Patriots.
Church and state was merged together, and the church used the power of the state to enforce its doctrines and practices.
He says certain governments used deadly force against dissenters who wanted to worship in their own way.
Those people were persecuted, burned at the stake. Some had their tongues cut out. The founders did not want that kind of Christianity.
So you're now seeing that what this administration and their men are promoting is antithetical to the founding of America. All right, here it is. Trump trying to distance himself from Project 2025. That did not go over well because people went into the files and saw that despite him trying to disavow Project 2025, many of the people in his administration, past and present, are a part of Heritage, a part of Project 2025. I want to note one who is a professed Seventh-day Adventist, and that is Dr. Ben Carson. It's right there, friends. He wrote a section of Project 2025. Should he not know better? As a professed Seventh-day Adventist, that church and state do not mix. That will bring persecution for your own people. Dr. Ben Carson. Here is J.D. Vance and his Catholic connection. It's right there, friends. Catholic connection. And America will form an image to popery. There it is right there. The same J.D. Vance promoting Catholic social teaching. And what is one of? That's social teaching of Roman Catholicism. It's a common good. And what is the common good? Here it is now. Sunday worship by law. That is what is in Project 2025. The golden age, bringing us back to Babylon. And the question is, do we, listen to me, do we have the experience of those 3 Hebrew boys who'd rather die than bow down to a golden age? Die than bow down and worship an image. Rather die than bow down and worship on a false day based on the government. Remember, Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, he was both a pagan worshiper and a civil leader. And the civil office forced every single nation, every single person to worship against their conscience. That's the head of gold. It's a warning, friends. When these things are presented, we have to speak as if we know it's certain, that we know it is near. This is not fiction. The Pope says, religion should not be confined to personal conscience. And this is what J.D. Vance, this is what Kevin Roberts, Heritage are all promoting. Watch this, because you might think I'm making this up. On the screen right there, that is J.D. Vance speaking at this group. Hear what was said at that group meeting. Watch this.
The public ordination to God is something that has suffered badly in recent decades, but it is easily restored. And I would say it is enacted and continues to be on the books in many different states in the way of blue laws, of Sabbath laws. If you've been following our disputes, we've been proponents of Sabbath laws. A restoration of the Sabbath is the most concrete and material gift that we can give to our nation.
Sabbath laws, Pastor, I mean, that could be Saturday, right? No. Sunday he's talking about. Here it is.
Good. A public orientation to God then reflected where? Reflected in concrete ways, in national holidays, in civic liturgies, in laws, indeed, Sabbath laws, Sunday laws that would require a cessation of what? Commerce. A cessation.
You can buy or sell. Bring it right back. So what did Trump say? The golden age. You have Elon Musk, Novus Ordo Seclorum, and they're both in finance. What is the mark of the beast linked to? Marie, talk to us. You can't what?
Buy or sell.
It's all connected. There it is. And here is Kevin Roberts now. Connect the dots. This second term, you better be on your spiritual tippy toes. Here's Kevin Roberts. Notice his affiliation, Roman Catholicism. It's right there, friends. It's not speculation. And the actual author, lead author of Project 2025 says they are promoting Sunday closing.
I don't think
this is Jonathan Berry. Here he is.
I don't think Congress has the authority to mandate like a national closing on the Sabbath. That was always a state decision to do that. But let me add, it was always a state decision.
Watch this. And what's going to happen to SDAs? Even though you have heard this before, it needs to be repeated.
In a pluralist society, if you reinstate blue laws, then you would have to outlaw sports teams on Saturday in order to accommodate Jews for the Sabbath, or Muslims, Seventh-day Adventists. So how do you kind of thread that needle?
Well, But we're not obligated to satisfy every group under the sun. You have to make these judgments.
We won't tolerate and accommodate Seventh-day Adventists.
From him. And then you also want to make it easy for Christians to do Christian things. I mean, that's the main rationale given by courts for Sabbath laws. We want to make it very easy for and make it clear to everyone which Sabbath we're in favor of. That's the religion we want to be perpetuated.
We want
now stay right there. This is Stephen Wolfe. This small little group called Seventh-day Adventists. Don't you realize we're now being brought into prominence? That's volume 5, page 546. We were once looked upon as being small and insignificant, but a change will come. They are now calling us by name, Seventh-day Adventist. We won't tolerate that group. Here is a Christian nationalist, the ones who surround Trump. Here he is.
The best critique is basically that what you're doing is it's a de facto privileging of Christianity, because which religion has the Sabbath on Sunday? Well, it's Christianity, and so you're not doing it on Saturday. You're not doing it. So you're explicitly saying this is a Christian land, and we're going to all force you to obey some sort of Christian. And so that's the best critique, and I would just say. That's exactly what it does. I would just one of those things, I'm not going to reject their objection. I'm just going to affirm it. Yes. That's what Christian nationalism is actually saying we're going to privilege the true religion, which is Christianity. And so, we are privileging a Christian, holy day in a sense. Every, good Presbyterian, every Sunday is holy. And we're going to do that because we're a Christian nation. That's the idea of Christian nationalism. So I'm not going to retreat to, it's good for all. And of course, everyone gets the day off. Yeah. But it is an explicit recognition of the kind of of privileging of Christianity. Yeah. And I think that's
it. What happened in the Dark Ages, when popery was reigning and controlled all civil power, the kings of Europe? Where did God's people have to flee in order to worship God in spirit and in truth? Where? Into the wilderness, in hiding, my friends. Do we not see where these things are tending? Once popery received her deadly wound, the church was brought into prominence. Popery went into the wilderness. Watch now. So when popery and apostate Protestants are coming out the wilderness into prominence, Sunday worship, mark of the beast, persecution, God's people will be driven back into where? The wilderness. The 5 keys of survival. It's clear, my friends. It's a warning. And this is the second term. The second term. And when you think about this, could this be a return of the Roman army? Because when Cestius came, everybody thought this was it. But Cestius retreated. Could this be Titus coming back to Jerusalem? Could this be the mark of the beast crisis? Could it be? Questions to be asked. We don't know. Anybody who says yes, you are deluded. If you say no, you're also deluded. Nobody knows. So when must we be found prepared? Every single day. That's the urgency. I'm not through with you yet. Here is Kevin Roberts.
Number 2, to the point of the clips and of course your preview of the fact that I am an early American historian and love the Constitution, that Supreme Court ruling yesterday on immunity is vital. And it's vital for a lot of reasons, but I would go to Federalist number 70 if people in the audience are looking for something to read over Independence Day weekend, in addition to rereading the Declaration of Independence. Read Hamilton's number 70, because there, along with some other essays, he talks about the importance of a vigorous executive.
All right. Marie, I know you want to chime in on that one.
Vigorous executive, immunity, right? All of these things. Again, one party rule, Pastor.
And that's why I set this up just for you. That's it. Move on. Here's Kevin Roberts.
Full circle in this response, and just want to encourage you with some substance that we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Don't stop there. Listen.
Your state. What we're doing here is building not just for 2025, Steve, but for the next century in the United States. And that's why MSNBC and that history professor have lost their ever-loving minds, because they've never seen the political right be this organized, this focused, this rational about taking power and actually using it appropriately, as the Constitution says.
The second term is telling you it's going to be more ruthless, because now we have a vigorous executive. They are the ones pulling the strings, not even Trump. Trump is simply drunk on power. That's all he wants. It's not money. Power is a currency. Whatever it takes to get the office, to pacify my pride. I lost. I must win again. Anything, he'll do it. But they're the ones behind the scenes pulling the proverbial strings. Now, Kevin Roberts just said, it's not just for 2025, but for what? Centuries. Why would he speak that way? Watch this. I'm going to come back to that clip. Why would he speak that way? Because these are the words of Roman Catholicism. Watch this.
And that there isn't enough time.
Listen.
But in fact, we are on God's time. And it's trite to say that, but we also know that it's true.
Listen.
And we know that Mother Church doesn't think in terms of days and months and presidential election cycles. She doesn't even think in terms of decades. She thinks in terms of centuries and millennia. And
That's it. Who is Mother Church? The Roman Catholic Church. She does not think about simple days and months and weeks, even election cycles. It's what? Centuries. So what they're doing in the second term, it's going to continue until they get that Sunday law enforced. They get America being controlled by Roman Catholicism, because historically, the persecuted church fled to America and found an asylum and refuge. Popery remembers that. Popery despises America just for that. And America had the two horns, religious and civil freedom, the Constitution. So Popery cannot come over here and persecute dissenters. Popery remembers that. And that's why in the encyclical, the popes said the U.S. Constitution is a pestilential error. It must be despised. The church can force the conscience. She won't stop. Here is Sister White now. Watch this now. The Roman church, she can read what is to be. She bides her time well. That's it. Let's come back here to Kevin Roberts. Hear what he says. The man said, most of our policies to control the second term of Trump, some of them have been made public, but their policies we have not spoken of publicly. I wonder what those policies would include. Watch him. Listen.
The basis of the plan is public. You can see that at project2025.org. There are parts of the plan that we will not share with the left. The executive orders, the rules and regulations, just like a good football team, we don't want to tip off our playbook to the left.
That's it. But remember, that which is hidden will be made public. So how may we know what is coming? Prophecy. Because prophecy is that light that shines into a dark place. That's it. Prophecy. So we know exactly what is in their playbook. Come on. Come back to Kevin Roberts. Hear what he says about his mother church.
Thing for those of us who are in politics is that, even at Heritage, where we're really zealously focused on policy, not elections, policy outcomes often are determined by who wins the election. So we have to pay attention to the elections. The challenge for us is we feel like Rome, Washington, is on fire.
They are going to shape the policy of nations. And that's why they focus where? On elections. Because the one who wins, through him, they can shape the policy of nations. Marie, your closing words.
Pastor, there's so much that could be said. I just quickly want to say, sometimes we look at some of these events as isolated incidents, right? And we don't look at the big picture. And we have to look at prophecy and everything that's happening as if it is a 1,000-piece puzzle. And, I was thinking to myself, sometimes you can take the centerpiece. If you first dump out that puzzle and pick up that centerpiece, right? It doesn't seem really significant, right? But if you have all of the other pieces in place, and you then pick up that last piece, it's so much more significant than it was before. And many of us aren't seeing how all of these things are coming together. The final pieces are in place. The same way that you would look at a puzzle and you would see how everything is coming together, that's exactly what's happening. This is why I believe, Pastor, that you're so passionate about this, is because you can see the final picture coming together. So my encouragement to myself, as well as to those of us that are listening in, time is winding up. That final piece is almost in place. Make sure that you're ready.
And as you mentioned, the puzzle with the pieces, we know how to put it together because we look at the picture, the image, and we can see the image by studying the prophecies in the Bible. And now we can put the pieces together. We're told, as I close, here's one my conservative base is really going to like: a constitutional amendment requiring folks to attend church on Sundays. That was in 2004. Poper things in decades. And we're hearing rhetoric, sentiments that are pushing the same agenda, because the mark of the beast is the last event before the second coming of Christ. Heretofore, those who presented the truths of the third angel's message have often been regarded as mere alarmists. Their predictions that religious intolerance would gain control in the U.S., that church and state would unite to persecute those who keep the commandments of God, have been pronounced groundless and absurd. But notice now, but as the question of enforcing Sunday observance is widely agitated, the event so long doubted and disbelieved is seen to be approaching. And the third message will produce an effect which it could not have had before. We are now seeing the fulfillment of that statement. In this second term, we're going to be more ruthless and aggressive. Sister White says a storm is coming. A storm is coming. And we need to get ready. God's people will not have mercy or justice. And when the mark of the beast is enforced, God's people will lose every earthly support. Every earthly support will be cut off. Who would we say are our earthly support? What would we say is our earthly support? We can begin in the homes. Marriages are going to fall apart. Unfortunately, every earthly support will be cut off. Brother against brother, sister against sister. Because one is standing for present truth, implementing the 5 keys of survival. The others are lackadaisical spiritually. They are worldly, going after the world in a backsliding condition. Every earthly support will be cut off. Jobs, businesses, every earthly support will be cut off. Church leaders, yes, will disown you. Every earthly support will be cut off. But praise God, when mother and father forsake you, God will take you up. Psalm 27. Go read that, my friends, and prayerfully read those words. Isaiah 33, verse 16, verse 17. In that crisis, your bread and water will be sure. Verse 15 through verse 16. But you have to make sure you implement that first key of survival. Let me close with these last words. People are going to say, don't focus on these elections. Hold on. You just heard Kevin Roberts says, Rome does focuses on elections. Because she wants to control the ones who can shape the policies of nations. And then control the courts, Senate, and the House, Congress in America. That's it. That is the end result. We must focus on these things and view them through the lenses of prophecy, Bible and spirit of prophecy. By God's grace, I'll see you tomorrow. But let's pray before we go. Father in heaven,